Today on the Angry Catholic Show, we're going to tackle our bishop just couldn't resist. Our angry item of the day is Martin is at it again. And what is a woman? Welcome. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Joe Pacillo from Frontline with Joe and Joe. Back in 2002, we were all told by the bishops that they were going to fix the abuse problem in the church. Well, in 2013, a priest that our family was close with was arrested in a car with a 15-year-old boy. And last year, Ed Locke, the music director for St. Nicholas Parish in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, was caught on video and text luring what he thought was a 15-year-old boy to his house at midnight. And our bishop still hasn't told the parishioners why he was removed from ministry. And last October, Father Lockney, who was the first seminarian Bishop Bamber ever ordained to the priesthood, was arrested for luring two minor boys to his house. Other than a general statement from the diocese, not a word. But the bishops continue to assure us that they've taken care of the problem. And yet none of the bishops are investigating how this happened and continues to happen. Today, sexual abuse survivors are being re-abused by diocesan authorities who ignore and stonewall those seeking justice. If Catholics don't speak up and get involved, the message from a few can continue to be ignored by the bishops. So here we go. Well, I think we're going to have some fun today. I want to thank Joe Pacillo for joining us and taking the time out of your busy schedule now on the West Coast.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for having me on. As always, it's been too long since I know that you sat in, Paul, for me a couple of weeks ago on the front line with Joe and Joe, but it's been too long since we've spoken. So this is going to be a lot of fun, like you said, but definitely going to have to do this more often moving forward. Yeah,
and those that don't know who Joe is a host with the Front Line with Joe and Joe. And on their show on Frontline TV, they welcome guests to their kitchen table to talk about faith and culture from the perspective of the everyday man. And these guys are not afraid to take sides. And I do just want to say I think it's very important, especially what's going on in the culture right now and what's going on in the church. It's very important to have the conversations we're having. And that's exactly what you guys do on a regular basis. So to get us started, we came in with our bishop just couldn't resist. This past weekend, we went to Mass here in our diocese, the Diocese of Scranton. And if you didn't know that Roe was overturned, you would not have had a clue attending that Mass that anything has happened.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing. Now I know I've already heard that other priests and I'm sure bishops have made a big deal and talked about this at Mass this past weekend, but it was literally crickets, nothing. It was almost like they were going out of their way to make sure nothing was said. It wasn't even for the unborn, which is normally in our prayers of the faithful.
I was, 2 years old when Roe v. Wade was handed down. But I asked people after that decision, that Monday, January 22nd, 1973, what happened? Like, what happened that Sunday in the churches? And they said nothing. Nothing happened in the churches. The hierarchy they didn't kick, they didn't scream, they didn't raise holy heck or anything. No, nothing happened. So here we are 50 years later that this horrific decision is finally overturned, and we can really start as a people to build the culture of life here. And again, crickets. What about you, Joe?
Yeah. I try to understand. I try to understand as best I could what is going on with the USCCB. Joe and I on our show, we're very fair to them. When they do something good, we say it, and when they're silent or they do something that's just blatantly not so good, we'll say that too. And that has been I think it goes beyond abortion. I think it goes beyond that. I think it goes beyond I think it has to do with maybe there's a larger question involved, but keeping it with abortion, I just don't know what power this. I would say that they're a minority. Remember that 2/3 of the bishops did say that abortion was the preeminent issue. It should be 100% of the bishops that declare that abortion is the preeminent issue, just like you would if slavery was still around, okay? In other words, you would say, no, this is the issue that divides America. This is the moral issue, not of our, in my opinion, not just of our time, but of all time. Killing babies, that's a pretty big thing.
Yep.
That outweighs any evil that I've ever read about in human history, okay? And I don't know what power this yeah, you want to call it a cabal, you want to call it a clique, you want to call it whatever you want to call it. I don't know how they have so much power that those who would speak out don't seem to. Like, I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm overlooking something. Like, why isn't it that Archbishop Cordileone is not joined by at least 2/3 of the bishops? In other words, in saying in their diocese, if you are a Republican or a Democrat, if you're Catholic and you're for abortion, don't receive Holy Communion. You're not allowed. Okay? I don't know why. I don't know where they get their power from. I don't see the entire USCCB as corrupt. I don't. I think there's a lot of very good and holy voices there and good men in there. I don't know what power the minority has over them. I quite frankly am confused. And this has been going on, like you said, Chris, for decades. For decades. And the rest of us, remember something, if abortion has been kept alive in America since 1973 because of the Roman Catholic Church, but it's been the lay people and not the hierarchy that is responsible for that.
Absolutely.
All right. In other words, now some of them can take credit. Yes, they can, because they've been outspoken, very outspoken, but there's just quite frankly not enough. And I don't know, other than praying for them, what we need to do. We can't remove them from office. We could go and pray a rosary in front of Sacred Heart Cathedral in Newark, New Jersey, and ask Cardinal Tobin, hey, we want to talk to you. We want to know why you don't do this, and this. All right. I just don't know what good that's going to do. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, because God's in control of everything. But the weeds have to grow with the wheat. And then Jesus is going to, I think, whatever they do, I think our lesson here is from the abortion and 50 years of marching in the street and praying in front of abortion clinics. I think we have to take this as a lesson. Don't rely on men. Don't rely on them. If they join you, great. And if they don't, just keep doing what you're doing. It's really the only conclusion I could come to, guys.
Yeah, well, I think you're being very kind with the USCCB, because, if there were that many, we'll call them, just for argument's sake, good guys at the USCCB, we wouldn't be in the shape, and we would be the church would actually still have let's call it a moral voice in the culture right now. And nobody gives a rat's garbage of what the bishops think right now.
You're right. Look. If McElroy or one of these others, or Tobin or Supich, says something, I don't give a rat's garbage, to use your words. I don't care. If I learn, I've said this to Joe before, I've said this to my wife before, I learn nothing from these men. They don't help me in my journey towards Christ, not even a little bit. In fact, they are in fact obstacles to my coming closer to Christ. Okay, so on the one hand, I don't listen to them, and unfortunately, the more traditional, I hate to even put a word in front of it, but let's say the more traditional bishops, you got half the Catholics in America don't listen to them.
Yeah. Well,
like liberal Catholics, like people that are in our families, and people that are out there like Melinda Gates, who swears she's a faithful Catholic, but she promotes abortion and contraception in Africa to kill little black babies. All right, she's not going to listen to Cardinal Burke or Cordileone. Or any of or Bishop Aquila. We're so freaking divided. We're just so divided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I was able to contact a priest after Mass, and I had been sent a letter from an anonymous priest in the diocese that our bishop sent out to. It was addressed to the priests, the administrators, and to deacons. I think that's the three it was addressed to. And it literally was, and I did verify this to that priest, it was literally kind of like a shot over the bow, a warning that, hey, let's not celebrate this. Let's keep it kind of quiet. And I kind of verified that, hey, that's why priests, at least in our diocese, weren't saying anything or not celebrating this milestone in our nation's history.
Or seeing it as an encouraging moment. Although there were some outliers in the diocese of Scranton.
Yeah, absolutely there were.
That did. But for the most part, they were kind of given the message to, just keep it quiet, move on. And that's what happened when we were at Mass on Sunday. And you know what bothered me about it, Joe? Well, so many things bothered me about it. But as usual, missed opportunities to really teach people and really show, the gospel. Like this Sunday was the opportunity to mention that Roe versus Wade had been overturned, that abortion was now going to be going back to the states, the criminalization of it, and states were going to be deciding. And that was the next place we were going to have to move to build this culture of life. But to make sure that people knew the message loud and clear that we want people to know is that any mother, father, family member, or friend that has been involved in an abortion, there is hope, there is healing, there is a welcome back, there's forgiveness. Like this was the moment to share about Rachel's Vineyard, to share about the forgiveness and the mercy, and that how many people are active in this pro-life movement that have had abortions or that have committed abortions themselves. Like this is a movement of life, of forgiveness, and of mercy. This was the moment to do that. And instead, our bishop and then his priests who followed him decided to just stay quiet and, sweep everything under the rug. Not only sweep these poor little babies under the rug, but sweep the broken hearts and the troubled souls as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. Can I tell you guys what I would do if I was a congressman from Arizona? In other words, you know what?
Are you running?
I don't care how this sounds. What's that?
Are you going to be running?
Let me tell you something. The more I live here and the more I get involved, I wouldn't be shocked what God has in store for me.
Okay.
But I'll tell you one thing I would do. The first thing I would do, both as a troublemaker, but also because I'm sincere, and this is something I would like to see. If I was a congressman, I would introduce legislation to end the tax-exempt status of the Catholic Church and cut off all funding by the federal government to the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Whoop, whoop.
That's what I would do.
I'd vote for you.
And now, two reasons why. One is, on the troublemaking note, I want to see if they excommunicate me, okay, for proposing that. And the other is that they're not independent. They're not independent, and they need to be independent, okay? And the only way to do that is to do those two things. At the very least, if you want to leave the tax-exempt status, because then you'd have to do away with the tax-exempt status of all religious organizations. But even if you wanted to leave that in place, no federal funding whatsoever.
Yep.
None. No government funding at all for any activities of the Catholic Church. None. Zero.
That's right.
To make them more independent. I just think we're dealing with, I'm not going to say all. I don't think that's fair. I think we're dealing with many feckless men in the hierarchy in America, and I do think they want that money. So I would cut that money off. That would be my first act as a congressman, would be to cut that off, and then let's see what they do. Okay, because that seems to be the way it is. They don't want to open their mouth. They don't want. Look, they tolerate troublemaking priests like James Martin, and I'm sure we're going to get into him. Okay,
oh, yeah.
They'll tolerate troublemaking priests like him. But when a priest from the pulpit says, "Look, you're all welcome. If you're pro-abortion, you're welcome in this church." Okay, but your ideas are not welcome. One priest actually, who's going around on YouTube during a homily, has said that you are welcome. Your ideas are not. Okay, that priest is a troublemaker. They'll come down on him, but they won't come down on James Martin. I would cut off their funding, point blank, period.
Well, like you said, for that independent, you can't keep taking money from the government and stand on your own 2 feet. You can't do that. We saw that with the PPP money. The church took billions. It was in a couple $1 billion overall nationwide.
And in fact, Bishop Sticka of Knoxville, Tennessee, has now taken like that church tax that you have, the diocese, taxes every church. He's actually made a grab after his chancery got the money and his Catholic Charities got the PPP money for salaries, and all these different Catholic schools in Knoxville got their own specific PPP money for salaries. He's now assessing a tax on that money for these individual schools.
Right. I mean, and that's a great example, Chris. It's like, where does this end? When do you want to just say to them, guys, if do you read scripture? Did you hear the words of Jesus? Like, do you understand that you think you're doing something good by getting in bed with the party of death because they're going to give you money? Or in the example you just said, Chris, okay? In other words, you're so fiending over money. Jesus has a problem with that, and that came out of his mouth, not mine. Okay? Right. You're not preaching the gospel, or at the least you're preventing the gospel from being preached, all because of money. And I mean, again, I didn't go to seminary. They did. I'm sure they read scripture a lot more than I did. I'm sure they read Jesus' words a lot more than I did. These men are in trouble if they don't stop doing this, and not with me. Not with me, okay? With a much greater power than me. Okay, and I prayed, Chris and Paul. I pray that they would open their eyes and open their hearts and realize they're on the wrong path. They're on the wrong path.
I obviously am with you, but I'm not as nice as you are. I think I have to pray more. I really do, because I'm not as nice. But I would like to see, I mean, I want the conversion. I want the change. I wanted, in 2018, I wanted nothing more than for some of these bishops to come out and come clean and say, look, I enabled. I allowed McCarrick. I knew what he was doing, and I didn't care. It didn't matter enough to me that he's like fondling seminarians. I allowed this. I wanted someone to come forward, and in their statement, even on Friday, those that made some statements, and I wanted them to kind of be honest, like, wow, what a 50 years it's been. Thank you to the lady, to those who really put the time in to get this overturned and to never give up. It's very upsetting. Cardinal Dolan, he gave a statement, and he's out there, with everybody shucking it up, whatever. And it turns out like he stayed quiet when New York had that permissive abortion law with Cuomo, abortion all through 9 months, lighting up the, Empire State Buildings, celebrating this. And
right.
He stayed quiet about that celebration. Child sacrifice. And partly he did it because it turned out quietly he was going to be quiet so he could try to get some school choice money for the schools. The fact of the matter is, as the lady, you're right. We need to just keep moving forward. We need to build the culture of life. But I don't think it's disrespectful or not holy to call these bishops out on the carpet when they do this absolute garbage.
Well, to finish up, I just want to go to our bishop's statement that Bishop Bambera put online. It's on our website here in the Diocese of Scranton. And just to point something out, this is what the hook was we came in with. He said, for Catholics respecting life, especially the unborn, it is intrinsic to our identity as people of faith. While political and ideological divisions often drive us apart, we must remember that the sacred scripture call us to be one, reverencing every life that comes into our world. So up till this point, okay, it's okay, but he just can't help himself. So for this moment in our nation's history, then he goes to say, it is critical to note, however, that valuing human life is not simply confined to life in the womb, even though that's what we're talking about here. We must never dismiss or ignore our responsibility to care for, protect, and defend our brothers and sisters from serious threats to human life, including poverty, racism, and oppression. You can listen to us on KCRD-FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Google Play, and Spotify, and find us, as always, at theangrycatholic.com. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Joe Pacillo from Frontline with Joe and Joe. So for our angry item, we came in with Father Martin is at it again. And just in the last, it was like yesterday, the day before, right?
Yeah, it was like 2 days ago.
A couple days ago.
He can't help himself.
Yeah, he just, even our bishop, Father Martin, they just can't help themselves. But he put out a tweet and he had said, had I written my own statement, it probably would have said three things that I believe to be true. First, all life is sacred and is to be reverenced as a gift from God. Second, a 1-minute-old zygote is not the same as a 9-month-old baby about to be born.
Wrong.
I know.
Let's hear number three from Father Martin.
Yeah. What's his last great thing that's all true?
Yeah, I think last
As
part
he
was
triangulates.
women have consciences that must be heard, listened to, and respected. But those are only my beliefs, and I don't speak for the Society of Jesus. And since I'm not a moral theologian, I tend not to share them that frequently.
What makes
You see how slick he is? You see how slick he tries to be?
I think he's getting sloppy.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. I just jumping in. I think he's getting sloppy. I think he's getting sloppy. But go on, Joe.
You know, you mentioned in the last segment, Chris, that I'm charitable towards the bishops, or nicer, however you put it. My charity wanes when it comes to Father James Martin. Okay, because he's a liar, is what he is. Just because he doesn't blatantly come out and say something that's not true, all right, or something that could seem a little bit ambiguous, doesn't mean he's any less a liar. And there's numerous examples about how he lies, also about how he attacks anybody who believes in the teachings of the Catholic Church, that somehow we are deficient, we lack mercy, we lack love, we lack forgiveness, we lack compassion, simply because we adhere to the truth of the Church's teachings. But you see how he lies? He knows exactly what he's saying. He's saying that a baby in the earliest stage, a human life in the earliest stages of development, is not the same as a human life 9 months later. He knows he's lying. He knows that contradicts church teaching, and he knows you don't have to be a moral theologian to know that. You don't have to be, you know it. In other words, what is the difference between the baby at 1 minute old, okay, and me, except for a stage of development? I'm the same person I was at that same moment as a human being, as a human person. And he knows that. And he knows that's what the church teaches. And he says, I'm not a moral theologian. Well, you certainly are talking like one.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and stick with me, guys. I just wonder, as a man talking that way, the first thing that comes to mind is, have you ever been enchanted by a woman and just enjoyed looking at a woman? Have we ever enchanted you? You know, because a man who has that shallow a view to say that, you know, a 1 minute old zygote isn't the same as a baby that was just born, isn't that where you go with that becomes like, and a woman who's 20 isn't the same as one who's 60, or isn't the same as someone who's disabled, or it's a very shallow view. And I just think men who hold that shallow view are not ever enchanted by women. And isn't that sad?
Well, that certainly, Chris, I mean, that's certainly one possibility. What I don't understand is when New Ways Ministry and Sister Janine Gramnick, who, by the way, Father Martin says is on her way to sainthood, all right, a supposed Catholic nun who says that there are certain circumstances where abortion is permissible. When the church came down on them and prevented them from, let's say, performing any ministry, okay, why is it that same church, and really the hierarchy hasn't changed that much, they were willing to come down against New Age Ministry and Sister Janine Gramnick and others involved with that ministry, yet they let this guy continue to keep saying what he's saying, knowing that what he's saying is erroneous, and in most cases just a blatant lie. Now you want to talk about something I really don't understand by the USCCB? I don't understand how they don't tell the Jesuits. They don't get the head of the Jesuits, get them in the back room with their cigars and their scotch, okay, and say, listen, you shut him down. You have the authority to do it. We want it done. Period. That's it. I don't understand. He's a liar. If you want to see a good video, guys, Trent Horn has a really good video commenting on this Martin Scorsese executive produced movie called Building a Bridge with Father Martin. Okay. In other words, and Trent Horn showed clips from it. Let me tell you something. If I wasn't convinced that Father Martin's a liar, I'm more convinced now. Okay. He is just such a liar. And moreover, listen, if he wants to go to hell, ultimately, Paul and Chris, that's going to be his business, okay? But what I will not allow him to do, even if he wants to hold those views, he's got to be spoken. He won't address anybody. He will not talk to anybody. He will not put himself in a position where he'll have to answer questions, okay? But if you're able to tell him, you're going to stop leading people down this wrong path, particularly those who have same-sex attraction. You have to stop doing this. You're leading them down the wrong path, because if you keep doing it, you're going to hell, Father. You're going to hell because you're sending others to hell. That's the type of truth that guy needs.
Well, even scarier, though, Joe, is this priest, Father Martin, mentors and grooms teenagers. Big part of his outreach are teenagers who are confused about their sexuality or about whether or not they're a man or a woman. And he mentors, he grooms, he outreaches, he does his thing. And I don't know what superior bishop, principal doesn't understand that this man should not be in that position. It's a problem just waiting to happen, and it's wrong.
I would ask him this, Chris. I would ask him this: if you're so concerned about those who are struggling with same-sex attraction, okay, and you want to find people who according to you, have received the teaching of the church, okay, because that's what he talks about. Maybe people are same-sex attracted and they're Catholic, but they haven't received the message. Well, there's a group out there called Courage, a ministry called Courage, gay and lesbian Catholics who have received the gospel. And you know what they do? They struggle with their same-sex attraction to live a chaste life. Okay, why don't you? He never talks about courage, ever. If you want to talk about brave gay men and women in the Catholic Church who are trying to live the life that Christ wants them to live and carry their cross, he never supports them. I think that's a sin in and of itself. He never mentions them. He never calls anybody to chastity. But he won't do that because it doesn't fit into his narrative. Michael Voris says he's gay. Michael Voris I was shocked, to be honest with you. I watched Michael Voris. Michael Voris said, I'm going to say that Father Martin's gay until he comes out and says that he's not.
Well,
I was shocked to see that, but maybe that's what it takes. This way, at least we know where Father Martin's coming from. Are you gay or are you not?
Well, the real problem, I think, is that the church is missing an opportunity here because none of the bishops, because it happened in our diocese, Father Martin, and I talked to Joe Ricinello when I was on the show with him about this just a little bit. We have Father Martin that comes in and he speaks at our university.
He also spoke at like a catechetical
he's been here like four
conference.
times in our diocese.
He's a favorite.
But I think the real problem is that he's never challenged. No one ever challenges him, and Father Martin's very responsive to he's very selective of what he'll respond to, like why he changed his profile pic on Twitter, but he won't respond to anything that means anything.
Well, he won't dialogue.
Paul, let me say this as it pertains. I'm sorry to cut you off. Let me say this as it pertains to both Father Martin, and let's just call him a man who's on the left, because that seems to be where he's coming from, and the left in general. They are never going to put themselves in a position where they actually have to publicly defend their position. Never. He'll never go into a parish where in that parish, the parish will have been told ahead of time there will be no Q&A afterwards. He will never be in a debate. He won't even debate any other priest who disagrees with him in a respectful civil arena or environment. He will never do that because his positions, particularly on the church, not just on gay homosexuality, but on the church in general, he cannot defend his position. He knows it. And that is the telltale sign to me. The same with the overall left. When you know that they won't debate, that's when you know you're winning. That's when you know that you have the truth on your side, because they do not want to hear the truth because they can't defend their position in light of the truth. That's what's the telltale sign with Father James Martin. Is I would respect him more if he would go on YouTube and host a debate of some kind on all these things he talks about. But he won't do it. He won't do it, and he rigs the game ahead of time.
If you're concerned about these issues, it's very important for us to share this information. Chris and I, along with a group of supporters, publish this show and want to ask for your help by sharing it. Email it, post it on social media, text it, or just tell somebody about it. You can be sure if you don't, then nothing will change. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're back. You're listening to The Angry Catholic Show. I'm Paul the Angry Catholic with my wife Chris and Joe Pacillo from Frontline with Joe and Joe. So for our final segment, we came in with, what is a woman? And I had the opportunity to watch the movie that Matt Walsh, he starred in it. I assume he wrote a lot of it. I didn't get to watch all the credits. But I'll tell you what, that movie was fantastic. And I think everybody, if you get the opportunity to watch this, you should, because he just did a very good job at very calmly speaking to people about some very, you would think, very simple things. And obviously the theme being, what is a woman? And you would not believe the answers and the way, like, legitimate, like, professionals, doctors, a surgeon actually think about this whole transgender thing. Maybe we get into that a little bit or not. But what is a woman?
Does Joe want to answer first?
I never thought in my lifetime I would ever have to answer that question. I mean, biology answers it for me. No, see, the left forced us to ask questions that we really shouldn't even have to ask. Like we should just shut it down and not because we don't want to debate, but to say there is no debate here. You want to talk about birthing people rather than mothers. You want to say, well, it's all gender and sex is not the same thing. These are arguments that we really ought not to be. That's the shame of it, is that we have to. Now, having said that, Matt Walsh, I liked Matt Walsh. I started to really like Matt Walsh. He showed his stones as a Catholic man when that homosexual state representative in Pennsylvania was mocking the women praying in front of an abortion clinic, and he doxed them. And Matt Walsh and Lila Rose got together, and they had about 1,000 people there the next week, basically in front of that same Planned Parenthood. Just to digress for a second.
That was in Philadelphia.
Told the guy, you're a bully when it comes to a couple of ladies praying the rosary on the sidewalk. But now there's 1,000 people here. You're nowhere to be found. So I gained a lot of respect for him in that way. And he did it as not an angry Catholic like us. He did it as a very calm, cool, and collected Catholic. And my understanding from the clips I've seen and the reviews I've seen, What is a Woman, his film, he does that same thing. And you know why you know what makes him more dangerous for these people? See, they know I'm a hot-headed Italian, okay? They know I'm a hot-headed Catholic, okay? Matt Walsh disarms them. Matt Walsh does not allow his emotions to get the best of him. He disarms them by just staying on, asking questions to get to the truth. Did you see that one clip that they're showing on YouTube where the guy said that the truth is oppressive or something like that? You guys catch that?
Yeah, he was a doctor of gender studies out at the American University or somewhere out there.
Yeah. And he said, Matt Walsh said, because he said, why is this important to you? He says, the same as the transgender did on the Dr. Phil show. He says, why is this important to you? He says, because I'm interested in truth. He said, well, when you say truth, I find that condescending. Like it's, or tyrannical and or something, or something diabolical. No, he wouldn't use the word diabolical because he's diabolical. But you know what I mean.
Yep.
Well,
So now the truth is oppressive. The truth, if you say men are men and women are women, that is now a weapon of oppression that's being used, particularly by Catholics, according to these people.
Well, what was I guess horribly shocking to me was that there are adults that are taking these, and I can't imagine. I guess I don't want to think that they really believe this, but we'll let that lie for now.
This is this moment for mentally ill people. Okay.
But that's you literally have adults that are supposed to be protecting people and protecting children, and they're the ones that are allowing people to be harmed and harmed terribly. And if somebody is suffering and they are having issues, and everybody has issues when they go through puberty and, at different times in their lives, and whether, I don't know whether it's confusion or not, but everybody goes through that. Of course, they're going to, if it's availed to them, of course they're going to be interested in something that they think can help. But we as adults, the professional community as doctors and educated people and surgeons and psychiatrists, we're supposed to protect them.
Right.
That's gone out the window. You know what's interesting to me, though, is like we're probably not going to have a big question on what is a man. Because if a woman decides she's a man and she dresses up as a man and she takes off her breasts and mutilates her body and does all that, no man loses a job over that. No man loses opportunities in sports for that. No man, other men are not impacted the same way. And except the poor woman who's had her body mutilated. This is such a woman's issue for me in particular, because it does seem, if a woman who hacks her breasts off and tries to be a man and goes into a man's bathroom, that transgender person is not at risk. Like the rest of the bathroom occupants that are men are not at risk from that biological woman coming in. But it's not the other way around. Women are physically at risk. And you could lose your jobs now, and you can lose your sporting opportunities, and there's all sorts of stuff we use, not to mention who we are has been reduced to almost like this, like making fun of us. Like Dr. Rachel Levin, he with his pearls and his long hair and his fake boobs, and it makes women look like we're being mocked. All you got to do is have some long hair and boobs, and that's what makes you a woman. Like that's what we're reduced to. It's really
Chris,
offensive.
That's it is. I mean, but that's where when the other side, when the left, this is going to force them into a battle amongst themselves. Because remember something, there are feminists, lesbian feminist leftists who will say exactly what you just said. Now, they're in trouble, too, if you notice, like Martina Navratilova, J.K. Rowling. These are leftists. These are not conservative women, okay? Yeah. They're lesbians, or in the case of Navratilova, they're leftists. But they're saying, no, men are not women, and now they're getting into trouble, too. So just as a side note, I like to see when the left has to fight against each other on these things, because if they won this revolution, which they're not because God's not going to allow it, but if they ever did, there's going to be a civil war amongst them because they're going to have to turn their guns on each other because it's so inconsistent. And by the way, Chris, I think a good example, there is a conservative, supposedly conservative Republican state government in the state of Virginia right now because of what you just said. Because a boy who pretended to be a girl went into a girl's room and raped the girl, and the school board kept it secret from the father. And that was the inciting reason why the people of Virginia basically reacted against those people that are in support of this, okay? So Joe Rossinello says on the show all the time, I don't care who you are. You start messing with somebody's kid, generally speaking, there's going to be a reaction. But by the way, and that doesn't doesn't ever get any play in the media. That case there,
No.
where that girl was raped. She was raped. But remember something, Chris. She's not the right kind of victim for the left. So her rape doesn't matter, if you know what I mean. But
Absolutely.
That's where we're at. And now you can't even ask the question. If you say, what is a woman? Lose your job over that. Lose your job. Hide a rape from the parents of the kid that got raped. And not only will you keep your job, you'll get a raise.
Yeah, and one of the things that you'll see if you watch this What is a Woman by Matt Walsh, that you'll see that was very consistent through the whole thing, and it goes to the point that you made earlier, Joe, was that no matter what, no matter how you framed, no matter how Matt framed the question, they would not answer it. They did. They twisted their brain into pretzel mush to not answer the question. And they finally, some of them started to finally answer the question with his question.
Yeah, well, what do you think it is?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
What do you think of it? I know. But, I hate to go after the bishops, but I'm going to go after the bishops.
I lay this at their feet.
And I mean, when you have Bishop Barron sitting in an interview with Dave Rubin, who's same-sex attracted, and when he starts to talk about homosexuality and abortion, and Bishop Barron says he doesn't like to get into the pelvic issues, and he reduces the church's beautiful teaching on human sexuality and complementarity to just a part of the body that's just pelvic issues. When that's happening with America's bishop, should we be surprised that Caitlyn Jenner gets to be ESPN's Woman of the Year with boob prosthetics on the stage, and that, Dr. Rachel Levine is, this first woman who is appointed to something? Like, should we be surprised? I mean, if the truth is getting distorted in the church, Jesus Christ himself founded by a celebrity bishop who's got a huge platform, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that it's out in the rest of the world, right?
It's not, Chris. It's not surprising. I'm disgusted with it. Okay, I saw both that interview with Dave Rubin, and I saw the other interview when Ben Shapiro asked Bishop Barron, says, "I'm a Jew. Am I basically screwed?" And Bishop Barron missed the opportunity to evangelize in both cases. Very disappointed. I will tell you this: my view when it comes to a lot of this, particularly corruption in the church, lack of catechesis, lack of backbone, all of it. I try to take a bit more of an historical view. There's nothing new here. There's nothing. There's times in here. Right now, the church is weak. It's weak because of the men in the church. Okay, when the church is strong, the world is strong. When the church is weak, the world is weak, particularly as it pertains to America. Okay, and unfortunately, we have to speak up. I'm not suggesting that we don't. We have to. I met with a gentleman last week who knows, I think, at least a dozen bishops. I had lunch with him over the weekend. Right, very faithful Catholic. He says and he works, intimately, near them. He said flat out, he goes, we have to have the courage to tell the bishops when they say something right to their face. We have to know, Your Excellency, with respect, you're wrong, and say it loudly and say it out there. But my larger point was that this has happened before. This happened, there would have never been an English Reformation, if you want to call it a Reformation. It wasn't. If it wasn't for weak-kneed bishops, only John Fisher and Thomas More stood up. Okay, well, Thomas More wasn't a bishop, but you know where I'm going with that.
Yep.
Or at other times in history. All right, God will draw the greatest good afterwards, or perhaps during, okay, this time of tribulation for us. But we have to continue to slog our way through it. But my larger point is that I'm not shocked by it. I'm not shocked by anything anymore. If the bishops did nothing, I wouldn't even be shocked by it, because we have so many examples in history, so many examples where the bishops have been weak, the hierarchy has been weak, the leadership of the church has been weak, and that's when bad things happen. The only caveat to that, I would say, is that out of that darkness that ensues, God will draw out the greatest good. And historically, we've seen that. We've seen that, because God is God, and God, that's the way he operates, okay? We just have to slog our way through it, keep telling the truth, and when necessary, hopefully right to their face, no, Your Excellency, you're actually wrong about that. You're wrong about that. You shouldn't be, like we said with Father Martin or Bishop Barron. I mean, we're doing it on your show right now. We do it on our show. When they're wrong, we say they're wrong, and we hope every Catholic in America hears us. But I'm not shocked. That was my larger point.
All right, just to get back to the question, let's go back here and figure out now. So I just went to Google, and Google probably gave the best answer other than Matt Walsh's wife, and I won't say that. I won't give that away. Google said under the category, what is a woman? A person with XX chromosomes usually has female sex and reproductive organs and is therefore usually assigned, it says on that, assigned biological female. So that's what Google said.
Well, they're not assigned biological female. They
I
are biologically female.
I know that. But I'm just saying, but that was literally a better answer than any of the people that Matt had interviewed.
Don't we love the biology here? Like XX chroma, the biology.
Right.
And then you've got Father Martin trying to say on one hand, when something's a 1-day-old zygote, like he has no problem he doesn't have a problem assigning labels to people, to things. A 1-day zygote versus a 9-month-old baby versus a fetus versus, he likes to throw out all these little names he assigns. And then when it turns around to someone who's empirically, biologically a woman, and he doesn't want to assign anything to that yet. Don't you just love it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but see, I don't know. Sometimes we're told they're all so smart, like Father Martin is supposedly a very well-educated man. He's very smart,
so
but he won't understand exactly what you just said, Kristen. Yeah. You're tagging that human person with a label. You're calling that human person a zygote. You're dehumanizing that human being by calling that human being a zygote, which does not describe a human being. It describes the stages of development.
Well, I think we act as if being a woman is simply
or this, or that, or
I think we act as if being a woman is just a set of characteristics. I think that's actually the problem. That's the divergence that's happened, is you have like a Father Martin that's decided that a stage of development is defining your humanity, and that you don't really, and that you can assign humanity and value. And then on the flip side, that you as a woman, it's a set of characteristics that defines a woman, and it's not your biological sex. I think that's like where we kind of like talk past each other, because the fact of the matter is you're, as a woman, you are a woman the moment you're a 1-hour zygote. You are a woman or you are a man. You are female or you are male. And gender is actually what you assign in some languages to words, genders. Right. And that's why if that female zygote at 1 hour was female and then grows up and it gets into the stage of development as an adult and as a poet, we would call the female a poetess. I would use a feminine word. If that person was biologically male, I would call it a poet. Him a poet, and I would use him for his pronoun, and I would use her for her pronoun, because language is supposed to be specific and make sense of reality. So this is the problem. They're chaotic people, and they're getting their chance to flourish at the moment. And gosh, I can't wait till it's over.
All right, listen, and so at some point it will be brought to an end. I will caution you in one case, Chris. Your talk like that won't get you invited to the cocktail party.
That ended a long time ago. I don't know that I've ever been invited.
Right, like Joe Resinello usually likes to Jerseyfy that. He'll say, "You're not getting invited to the barbecue." I say you're not getting invited to the cocktail party. But remember one thing: I won't get too long-winded because I know we don't have a lot of time. But what you said about language, we have to remember that transcends this. That speaks to the Marxist angle in all this. Yeah. They have to destroy language and control language. That's central to their strategy. They have to control language because that's just what leftists do. So let's not forget that aspect of it either.
Well, this was a great week for the pro-lifers. Joe, could you finish us off with how somebody can listen to you?
And thank you for that, Paul. And thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show. The main place you could find us is if you go on YouTube, at least for now, till we make any moves, Frontline TV, the Frontline TV. You could like, subscribe, and share and get notified there. Or the Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube. The Frontline TV is a more extensive channel. Frontline with Joe and Joe is all Frontline with Joe and Joe, and that's also on YouTube. And you could do the same, and that would really help us out. And we also have a radio show in Connecticut on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, and you could download the app for that. We have a lot of great interviews on there from Robert Riley, E. Michael Jones, Raymond Arroyo, Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. So we got a great show going on there. So as with you guys, we're rocking and rolling, and we have Christ and Our Lady on our side, or we're on their side, and we're just going to keep it moving. We're going to be their worst nightmare.
Thank you for listening to The Angry Catholic Show. Send us an email to mail@theangrycatholic.com. Don't forget to share this show any way you can. I want to thank all the listeners who sent emails this week. Thank you, Chris, and a special thanks to Joe Pacillo. Stay active, stay alert, and stay angry.
This has been a production of Dumb Ox Media, Inc. All rights reserved.